Hi, and welcome to today's tip, which is the Kitchener stitch, otherwise known as grafting your toe stitches together on your sock. But you can use this stitch, the Kitchener stitch, for any two pieces that you want to graft together. So you don't necessarily want a seam, but you want them to essentially be knitted together. So here I have a sock, a rather large oversized sock, because this is prep for my upcoming sock class, and all the pieces are in different colours to demonstrate all the different stages of a sock, so hence that's why. And in true form, here's the toe section, which you can see has been shaped and reduced. So now I have my very typical 8 stitches left on my 2 needles. I've been doing this sock on a circular needle. To do the Kitchener stitch, you will need different stitches on 2 different needles. So whether that's double pointed or circular, but you are literally grafting 2 sets of live stitches together. I am going to use a contrasting yarn here so that you can hopefully see this nice and clearly. And so hidden in there is my tail. Right, so here are my 2 stitches. As you can see, I've kept them divided on the 2 needles, and I'm going to refer to this needle as the front needle and this needle as the back needle. I have threaded through a contrast yarn onto a tapestry needle, so a needle with a hole big enough for the yarn to go through. But you would normally use the tail of your sock stitches. So if I was doing a regular sock, I'd be using the same colour yarn, or maybe you want to change colour and do a detail, but just so you know, I'm only using a different yarn and a different end so that it shows clearly. Okay, shall we start? So the Kitchener stitch has a setup row, which I'm going to demonstrate to you now. So you go into the first stitch on your front needle as if you're going to purl. You're going to pull the yarn along, and that's it. So you just go into the stitch as if you were going to purl, but you're not actually knocking it off a needle. So that's the first bit. Now I'm going to take my needle and go into the first stitch on the back needle as if I'm going to knit. So I'm going under this needle and through here, pulling my yarn. That is the setup row. So the first stitch on the front needle as if to purl, so in through the front, and the first stitch on the back needle as if to knit, so into the back. Okay, that's all set up, but now we're going to start the actual Kitchener stitch repeat. So we're going to go back into the first stitch on the front needle as if to knit this time. So I'm going in from front to back as if my tapestry needle was a knitting needle. I'm going to pull the yarn, and now I'm going to knock this stitch off my needle and pull the yarn quite tight. And then I'm going to go into the second stitch on my front needle as if to purl. So in I go, pulling the yarn. And that's it. I'm going to leave that stitch on the needle. Now I'm going to go into the first stitch on the back needle as if to purl again. So I pull that through, and now I'm going to knock this stitch off the back needle. And I'm going to pull my yarn through. And now I'm going to go into the second stitch, which is now the first stitch on the back needle, as if to knit. Being careful not to catch my first stitch on my front needle. There we go. And then I can pull my yarn a bit. Now I'm literally going to repeat that. So first stitch on the front needle as if to knit. So front to back. Knock it off. Into the second stitch, which is now the first stitch on my front needle, as if to purl, keep it on. Into the first stitch on my back needle, as if to purl, knock it off. Into the second stitch on my back needle, which is now the first stitch, as if to knit. Keep it on. And so we go on. So first stitch on the front needle as if to knit, knock it off, pull the yarn into the now second, well, was the second, now the first stitch on the front needle as if to purl, keep it on, into the first stitch on the back needle as if to purl, knock it off. Now the new first stitch on the back needle as if to knit. Making sure that you don't catch the yarn across the front needle. Keep it on. And now and again, just pull your yarn so that it tightens up the stitches, and you'll start seeing here that it's a somewhat invisible seam. You can obviously see because I'm using this contrast colour, but I'm basically knitting the two stitches together. So here we go again, next round as it were, into the first stitch on the front needle as if to knit, knock it off, into the second stitch as if to purl, keep it on, first stitch on the back needle as if to purl, knock it off, into the now first stitch, which was the second stitch on the back needle, as if to knit, and keep it on. And round we go again. First stitch on the front needle, as if to knit, knock it off, second stitch as if to purl. Oh, see how my yarn's just caught around the needle, so I want to make sure that's clean. Keep that stitch on, into the first stitch on the back needle as if to purl, knock it off, into the now first stitch on the back needle as if to knit, keep it on, and round we go. Just being careful not to catch the yarn, not to loop it around the needles. I've got a particularly sharp tapestry needle here as well, so that's slowing me down just a little because it risks catching the yarn. Here we are, last four. So into the first stitch on the front needle as if to knit, knock it off, into the second stitch as if to purl, leave it on, first stitch on the back needle as if to purl, making sure that your yarn goes underneath the needle, knock it off, into that second stitch as if to knit. Oh, see, it went on the top of my needle there, so I just need to make sure it's underneath. Last round. So into the last stitch on the front needle as if to knit, knock it off, into the back stitch as if to purl. Pull your yarn, and then you would weave this end inside, turn your sock inside out, or whatever piece it is, weave your end in. May as well keep it on the tapestry needle so it's nice and easy to do. But so you can see there, a near invisible seam. So if I was using the same colour yarn, you wouldn't see any difference whatsoever. The stitches would just be knitted together. As I've used a contrast, you can see it now and again just appearing, but it is nice and strong. And if you pulled it really apart, you'd just see the contrast stitches there. And that is the Kitchener stitch. So easy and looks so good. For beginner knitting lessons or more knitting tips and tricks, please head to my website learntoknitonline.com. You will find the tips and tricks page underneath the knitting lesson tab, and otherwise subscribe to my YouTube channel or sign up to my monthly newsletter, The Loop, where I send out monthly tips and tricks, all the latest ones I've filmed. Thank you so much for watching, and happy knitting!